What's going on, everybody? Welcome back from a long hiatus. It's the SnapCast Podcast. Your favorite Magic the Gathering podcast for, kind of casual, kind of competitive players that have a kind of competitive interest in the finance side, the secondary market, and maybe what cards are worth. And today, I have a very special guest.
Hello, my name is Zach.
Yeah. So, a lot of people locally might know this, but, people on YouTube, people listening to the podcast won't know that Zach is one of the main reasons that I committed to playing Magic, because he was part of the sort of new player welcome crew at our local game store back in 2011, 2012.
I vaguely remember that. There was a lot going on. We had a lot of stuff going on back then.
Yeah,
I do remember that. I do remember you coming into the store and interacting with you for whatever deck or whatever you wanted to get into. So
yeah. I would come into the shop and people would be playing, and Modern was really new at the time.
Yep.
Basically, Modern was, because this was Avacyn Restored had just come out, I think. I'm trying to think back.
Yeah, somewhere around that
Somewhere
time.
around there. I think my first deck that I bought was like a Battle for Zendikar Precon. So it was just after Avacyn and all of that. And Zach was like, well, you could make these changes. And he really tried. He's like, if you play Modern, your cards don't rotate. You'll save money if you play Modern. And nobody has cost me more money in my life than, hey, let's start a Modern collection.
Was that the second time you came back to the game, though? Because the second time you bought the black-white tokens precon that they did a while ago.
Right. The only Modern event deck was black-white tokens.
Yeah.
And that was when I came back.
Yeah.
Because I could not make a Modern deck out of my stuff. And everything that everybody was playing was like Snapcasters and Cryptic Commands.
Yep.
And I was like, no, I'm not going to spend that kind of money.
Yeah, that's when our shop really became Modern focused and away from Standard.
Yeah.
So that sounds about right.
Yeah. I'm going to move this just a little closer to you. So when did you start playing Magic?
I found it when I was young, probably around 7 or 8. My dad took me to just a regular store. I noticed some people playing some cards. Thought it was pretty cool. He, along the way, got me a shoebox of Magic cards to look at, play around with, whatever. And then just kind of slowly progressed from there to where I am now, which is playing Magic most of the time at the shop and trying to travel to events that I can travel to.
Yeah. I know you settled on a Modern deck pretty early.
I did.
And you were pretty consistent with it for the last 10 years or so, but for the most part.
Yep, for the most part. Right around the time the first Modern Masters set came out, which was the first time that Dark Confidant got reprinted. So back in 2015, I think it was. I had settled on Merfolk as a deck of choice. The GP that we were all going to at the time was Modern.
Okay.
And it was, at that time, a cheap option.
Gotcha.
Not so much anymore. But at the time of 2015, it was fairly cheap.
Okay.
And it's been my deck of choice.
Yeah. Zach also inspired me a little bit to get into the whole foiling bit. So, again, when I say who has cost me the most money in the last 10 years, it might actually
Probably
be
this guy.
This guy right here. He's the guy that was like, hey, here's my fully foiled out fish deck. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And yeah, so I played the black-white tokens for a while, and then I went from deck to deck until had some success with Bant Eldrazi.
Yep.
And then that sort of fell out of favor. And went on to humans, and I was basically on humans until, well, what year was States was that? Was that 2018? Trying to think.
I don't even remember the last time I went to States.
When was the last time they had States?
Probably 16 or 17.
16 or 17.
That's the last one I remember because I actually lost to Cooley in Swiss.
Okay.
The top 8. So that's the last States that I can remember.
And the last States I went to, I lost in the quarterfinals.
Yep.
I will never forget that game. You never forget those games. So clearly we've known each other for a long time. We've played a lot of Magic together. I've had a lot of miserable games playing against Fish for a long time. Zach is one of the end bosses at our shop still, and the other Zach. And so, our shop, whenever I would listen to a podcast when I first started getting to Magic, if I listened to a podcast or I watched a YouTube video and guys were like, oh, you could get away with that at F&M, I was like, they are not playing at my F&M.
What F&M are they playing at? Because ours is not that way.
Right. What's our F&M like?
Almost REL competitive.
Yeah, to the point where, like, sometimes some of us have to be reminded to, like,
tone it down
and give a kid a break. Like, let a younger player take a bad play back and be like, oh, they don't know what this card did. Now that they know what this card did, they would do something differently. So it's been a lot of fun. Speaking of events, we actually have a 1.25K, which is such a weird thing.
Yeah, I just refer to it as a 1K because it's basically what that is.
I should say, I think we have a lot of enfranchised players that watch the YouTube and listen to the podcast, but what's a 1K?
So it's usually a cash event where it's paid out to the top 8, sometimes top 16, depending on the turnout. The top 8 is usually at least $1,000 in prizes total. That fluctuates based on attendance. And then it's a format of choice, and you just kind of go from there. You play it out like a regular tournament. There's usually 5 or 6 rounds of Swiss, and cut to top 8.
Gotcha.
But it's a cash event, which is
so it's a cash event. You pay whatever your entry fee is. Yeah, it's kind of like half of day one, the first half of day one, and the last half of day 3 of a GP.
Yep, that's a good way to look at it. It's the next step above Friday Night Magic, right?
Gotcha.
So you go to your shop, your local card store. You're always consistently, in the prize support of your Friday Night Magic. This is the next step up, basically. It's everyone's playing for actual prizes, actual cash money, and the competition is going to be a lot better than what's at your store, your local store.
Well, except for our store. Well, not our F&Ms, but in general, the idea is people that are going there they're not just going there for fun. They're going to enjoy the competition as much as the gameplay and hanging out with
exactly.
people.
They're looking for the complicated turns, the complicated playing of cards, getting any sort of advantage they can, stuff like that.
Yeah, those are the people that are really thinking about. Okay, I see Abzan colors on his side of the battlefield. I don't know what deck he's on, or I don't know exactly what's in his list. What could he have?
Right. They know, in general, they know what kind of cards are played in most decks, because at that level, a lot of the decks, if they're sharing colors, they're playing similar cards.
Yeah. Modern is a humongous card pool that we play very little of.
Yep. Yep.
We play this small portion of Modern cards. And, there's a lot of talk about financial relevance. There's a lot of talk right now about how much smaller that card pool's gotten with Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2. Mm-hmm. Do you know what you're going to play? Have you settled on your deck for the 1K? You don't have to tell anybody if you don't want to give out.
It will probably be Merfolk.
Okay.
I haven't actually played it in a big event since pre-COVID. So And now that it's all completely foiled out, I'd like to actually show off that foily goodness and play it at this 1K.
That's awesome. So Zach totally embodies the know your archetype and know its matchups side of Modern that a lot of players that are really invested in Modern lean on, which is you can play a deck that's not, if you go to Goldfish and look at the top 8 decks, those are the popular decks.
Yep.
You go a little further down and you find decks that are just as powerful, and if you know your deck and know the matchup, can win just as easily. And he definitely embodies that idea of, I know what all of these cards can do in weird ways.
Yep.
And in weird interactions that my opponents might not.
And if they don't, then it gives me whatever slight advantage or edge in that matchup. And some people might think that's bad, others good. It all depends on the way that you like to play the game and consider it. But at that competitive level, you have to do that.
Right. Well, and it could be, again, I don't know Zach's deck list. I don't know, his 75. But when we play against each other, I'm always thinking, okay, I haven't been keeping up with Nikachu or any of the big streamers that play Merfolk. I don't know if Merfolk Trickster's in there right now or Merfolk Regery.
Yep.
Am I going to get bounced when I tap, or is he going to blow me out with a Trickster? I don't know. I'm playing Hardened Scales. He can look at me and basically go, he's got a hammer. Because my deck list is fairly stock, but it's such a played deck in the meta that everybody has a good sense of what's in it. I might only play against Merfolk
once every few weeks
when I play against Zach.
Yep.
So this is another cool thing about the 1.25 cases, even though they are super, or 1Ks, let's just call it a 1K.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though they are much more competitive than an F&M, in all of my experience with going to 1Ks, I've definitely seen decks that I didn't know what was going on.
Yep. Oh, I mean, everyone, most of the time, people aren't going to be changing decks too often. They're going to play what they know, and they're going to play what they have in their collection. So, someone could be on elves, because that's all they have. Just like me with fish, they could just have elves. And so, but that's another deck that you're not going to see a lot of in a lot of the bigger matchup and a lot of the bigger events, because people tend to gravitate towards, if they have the skill ability, to gravitate towards what they think will win the event.
Yeah.
Other than what they know and have.
Yeah. And honestly, for right now, when we're talking about what people are looking at for big events, we're talking about Moto still.
Pretty much. That's where I do a lot of my playtesting and quote-unquote grinding. But weekend events are usually some of the biggest played events right now online. They have at least 2 weekend challenges a weekend on top of maybe a super qualifier for some big event down the road. And then you have daily leagues that you can play on basically any time of day at your time, and you can complete 5 rounds whenever you want to.
Interesting. So you can just log in, play around, log out, log in, play around.
Yep.
I think I've talked about this on here before, but my Moto experience is very limited. I have a handful of cards on there. I don't even own a PC. So I can't even log on and look at my humans list on Moto. Thankfully, Arena's getting damn close, but that's a story for another day.
It's getting close.
So I see you brought some notes with you.
Yep.
Are any of those about the 1K?
Some of them are. Mostly they're just things to remind me of what to talk about. Okay. So preparation for the 1K, my deck of choice, which we've already established, has been going to be Merfolk, more or less.
Nice.
And then sideboard choices. So just like everything else, Merfolk has a wide option of choices for cards. And those come in and out based on the meta that we think we're going to play against.
So do I'm not to interrupt you, but do you have an idea of what the meta is going to be down there? And what is that based on?
I'd base it off my experience from playing down in that area quite a bit, because there used to be a store that used to hold 1Ks pretty frequently pre-COVID. Assuming that all those players that are still in that area are going to come to this, I can generally assume there's going to be people on Grixis Death Shadow, Hammer Time, probably some variation of the creativity decks that have been floating around on Magic Online.
Ooh, baby.
Just because the people that are going to go to this, again, they're going to look to win the event. So they're going to want to play decks that they have in their collection, but they think are good enough to win. So
sounds like that's neither of us farting. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's the heat in my house just tearing one off. And so a lot of what you just said, though, are the top decks in the meta according to Goldfish.
Yep.
So they're decks that people have, but they're also the decks that people think this deck is going to win. Yep. Like this deck is just better.
Yep. So Grixis Death Shadow, I've been thinking about this over the past few days, is probably the deck to beat going into this event or any other online events, whether it's a challenge, whether it's a qualifier, or just a league. If you can't beat Grixis Death Shadow, you got to come up with a plan. Because it's the best deck in the format right now, more than likely.
Okay. And so not to ask you to give away your tech, but obviously having put that much thought into it, what can you do?
Dodge it. Don't play against it. Just dodge it. No.
That's my plan against you at F&M. It never works.
You have to look at the axis on how the deck tries to interact with you and see if you can disrupt that. So they have, in my instance, they have hand disruption and creature removal. How can I stop that? Well, I can't really stop the hand disruption part, but I can play a Kira Great Glass Spinner and make it harder for them to kill my creatures.
Okay.
It forces them to basically have 2 removal spells instead of 1.
Yeah.
So maybe that's good enough to get in the extra points of damage. Maybe it's not, but it's something.
Well, and it's knowing that what does your deck have the most of?
Yep.
Creatures.
It is a creature-based deck.
Like, well, I'm just thinking through your logic of something as simple as Akira that makes them use 2 removal spells. When you're likely to have, don't worry about it, a handful of creatures, like you have more creatures to play.
Yep.
You just need to slow them down or make them focus on specific creatures. So I think as simple as that is to say, it really does consider your deck's strengths. Because it's like, yeah, you can take a creature out of my hand and you can kill the first 2 that I play, but the odds that I'm going to top deck are more likely a creature than a land, even in Fish.
Yep. Right now, I'm running upwards of 33 creatures, which has kind of been the new normal for Merfolk to play. We used to only play 26 to 28. So
A lot more spells.
A lot more spells.
A few more lands.
Now we've trimmed on lands, we've trimmed on spells, and it's more creature focus.
Yeah.
But that's because MH2 gave us a few new toys to play with, and it's just really helped us a lot.
I forget. Are you playing the dock hand?
I am now. I wasn't in the beginning.
Okay.
It's kind of come around in the meta to be good.
Yeah.
So I'm now playing it.
And what's the one that's a... Because the dock hand is basically Rushodon Port.
Yep.
And then what's the other one that is spreading seas on a creature?
Tide Shaper.
Tide Shaper.
So Tide Shaper is a 1 blue, 1/1, with a kicker cost of 1. So as I play it, if I pay an extra mana to put towards the kicker, it enters the battlefield and makes one of your lands into an island. And it remains an island until it's as long as it's in play.
Yeah.
So if you remove it, your land goes back to being whatever it was. But It's a spreading seas on a stick.
It's a spreading seas that can swing at you. I think those 2 cards, because those were both from Modern Horizons.
Spreading Seas was from Zendikar.
Sorry, not Spreading Seas. I mean Rushodon Dockhand and
Tide Shaper.
Tide Shaper were both Modern Horizons.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that they definitely, like they did with goblins in Modern Horizon 1 and Modern Horizons 2, they said, let's give Merfolk a little love. You got Svelin in that.
Sea and Sky, yep.
Yeah. I mean, so really, Modern Horizons 2 really changed your deck.
It changed my deck. It also basically changed the whole meta around. Ragavan, DRC, Dragon Rage, Chandler, and then all of the elemental incarnates have just dominated this format.
I watched a little bit of a Aspiring Spike stream recently, and somebody laughed at him because they had a stack of 4 elementals. And it was against Living End, I think. And there was... it ended up getting capped off with a subtlety, which put a button in subtlety, because I'm going to talk about that later. But it was against Living End, and he was evoking an endurance, and there was a counter spell or something, and then he's like, well, I'll get the Solitude in the graveyard now. I'll evoke the Solitude.
Yep.
And then other guy did subtlety on the Solitude. And the chat was just like, what is this format with all these free spells? And the thing that he said was, for so long in Modern, creatures have been, like, questions have been better than answers. Creatures have been better than spells.
Yep.
These really do level sort of the playing field. And these are creatures and spells. Mm-hmm. And they can be played for free, so you can answer somebody else's BS.
Yep.
Without the mana. What do you think?
It's basically true. I mean, Modern before MH1 didn't really have a lot of free spells, quote-unquote free spells. MH1 brought in all of the forces, so Force of Negation. Those are both still being played. The other ones, not so much. And then MH2, you have all the elementals, and they've broken the format. They've created new decks, given old decks new life. Like Merfolk, we're actually playing Subtlety right now. We were not doing that beforehand. Living End is playing Endurance. It's playing Grief.
Foundation Breaker.
Which
doesn't really get talked about because it's not one of the incarnations, but you can evoke it.
Yep, you can evoke it.
To get out of Chalice.
Yep, which I've had that happen. It's just, they have done so much for the format. Whether or not you can consider it being rebalanced, it's probably still too early to tell. But you're going to see them in every deck. You're going to see them in every matchup, somewhere, somehow, some form.
I've been having fun playing Modern. I mean, I see a good handful of these cards in the shop. It's not as bad as what I see when I watch people stream. But again, they're basically a lot of these streamers that are playing leagues. Leagues are. Would you say leagues are in between an FNM and a 1K, or are they more like FNM?
They're probably in between the two. When they used to have a friendly league and a competitive league. And then at one point they decided we're just going to kind of combine the two. And at that point, people were saying that a league nowadays is almost the equivalence of a day 2 at a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Which is true. I mean, you don't know who you're going to play against. You can play against a pro. You can play against someone new. It's hard to say. But the overall skill level is probably about a day 2 event.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a little torn, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but Wizards just offloaded the management of Moto to a third-party company.
Yep, I heard about that. I know nothing about this company other than people immediately taking to Twitter and saying that this is usually where games go to die. So I can only hope that's not true, but without knowing much about the company itself, I can't say for sure. And
absolutely everything that I know about it is also second and third hand. But the one thing that I've heard is this company is famous for keeping old games afloat.
Yep.
Don't expect them to get better. They're not going to make huge improvements, but they stay around and just keep them going for a while.
For as long as they can. Yep.
But I think that this means that Wizards is really going to just say, okay, now we can put all of our focus on Arena.
That's probably not wrong. I was listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about potentially having Pioneer come to Arena at some point, which I think would be nice. They already have Historic and Alchemy, so I don't know how much they really want to push a paper format onto a digital platform.
Yeah.
As much as I would like to see it come to Arena, because then Modern wouldn't be too much of a stretch to come to Arena. And once that happens, I'm off of Moto. Moto is gone for me. I'm strictly playing Arena, which I don't play right now. I've maybe touched Arena once in the past 4 months.
Yeah.
I don't play it.
Yeah, I've only play it because I'm entirely Mac based.
Yep.
And actually, you can get a really close approximation to playing humans in Historic. And that's enough to get my jollies off when, I'm in the bathroom or going to bed on my iPad. I can play a couple of games of Magic, and that scratches the itch until it's time to go play. I went and played last night, by the way. By round 1, beat Burn in round 2, drew in round 3.
Nice.
Magic the way Garfield intended, like they say. Yeah, yep. I played two games of Magic, and went 2-0-1 to split first with GB.
Okay. Was he still playing Singleton?
He was, and I was so glad not to have to play against it. He's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" He's like, "Well, I wouldn't mind going home." And I was like, "You got it, buddy." The odds that I was going to beat him on Hammer were slim to none when he could literally cast. He was talking about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, I cast Kolagon's Command and then flash in Lutri." And kill that, shatter that, kill that, shatter that. That doesn't sound like a good time to me.
That sounds like the Elementals deck I played against last night on Moto. Had a decent board state of 4 creatures, and then I'm thinking to myself, they're going to flash into Solitude, and they're going to blink it with that 1-mana Ephemerate. And sure enough, flashed in Solitude, blinked it, untapped, rebound, blink spell, blink it again, and my board state is gone. And so was my game.
And that cost them 3 cards and left them with a
3/2 lifelinker blocker. Yep.
Man.
I was probably going to 4-1 that league up until that point, because I ended up winning my 5th round against a creativity deck. So
that's for new people that are listening or watching, when we're talking more about financial relevant stuff,
which hopefully will be in the next few minutes.
Hopefully we'll get to. Yeah. I actually have a pick based on some of the new creativity lists and that. But I mean, what else do we want to say about this 1K and preparing for a 1K? What you think is going to be there?
Mostly the biggest advice that I always give to people, because a lot of people come to me, for advice, whether it's a deck to play at Friday Night Magic or at some big event, and they go like, "What should I play?" I always tell them, play what you know well. Because we've said it before in this cast, that's going to be the 2 biggest things to get you through at least the bulk of that event. It might not top 8, but you should be able to come out of it with at least a winning record to some degree. Unless you get bad variants and you can't control that. But
right, and I think the other point to that is, if you pick up a deck and you know what the deck does, but you've never played it before, you have to think really hard about every turn of every game.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Don't pick up Death Shadow because
it's the
best deck in the format, and go, I can easily 5-0 this. And it's actually really complicated because you have to keep in mind your life total for Death Shadow, which puts you in range of burn spells and other variations of cards.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many moving parts to that deck to make it play properly that you can't just pick it up and go play it a 1K.
Yeah, and that's true for every modern
That's
deck.
cute.
I can't pick up Living End. I probably couldn't pick up Living End this week and play it next weekend and hope to be successful.
Right.
Nah.
I mean, Living It is actually pretty straightforward, and I've actually been playing it a little bit on Moto. I'm using a rental service to try out different decks because I want to kind of play other decks at this point. But it's actually, Living It is probably one of the more straightforward decks. You put stuff into the graveyard,
And you hope to cascade
play
into
a cascade spell, then hope to hit Living End. Yay! That's you put giant creatures on the battlefield.
Yeah. The tricky part is you have an opponent sitting across from you that's trying to stop you from doing that.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's like Burn. Burn is a simple strategy. I want to throw 7 bolts at you, but it's not that easy to play.
Yep.
Right? So a simple strategy doesn't mean that it's simple to play.
Correct.
But to your point, play what you know so that you don't have to think through every turn of every game.
Right. Because sometimes you can just do everything on autopilot. And that's really nice because it saves on mental power for maybe some games later on in that round or top 8. And it's a relief to just go through the motions sometimes, knowing that your opponent isn't going to do anything about it.
So before we leave tonight, I want to talk about any cards that you think that are a particularly good deal or something that somebody should be paying attention to.
Okay. Well, I have 2. I have actually one for Modern, and then I have another for Pioneer. I say Pioneer because it's a format that we don't play at the moment. There was or is going to be a Pioneer kind of big event online.
Okay.
And so some streamers and people have been picking it up and playing it.
Preparing for the event.
Preparing for the event. And so I wanted to kind of find something in that format because I know some places out west, across the states, across the world, they still play Pioneer. Yep. We might not, but other places do.
There's another podcast, not to advertise for other folks, but the Crew 3 MTG podcast. Those guys tend to focus on Pioneer, and when it's in or out of favor, and they really want it to succeed. So hearing that there's big events coming is actually, I mean, it's a great thing to hear. You know, they're also coming out with the Pioneer Challenger decks.
Yep.
So WotC's definitely shown that it's important to them. So I think having an idea about cards that might be financially relevant in Pioneer, great idea.
Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is Bullis' Citadel. Now, this was first released in War of the Spark, so not too old, past few years, right around the time that COVID hit.
Yep.
The retro frame promo, which stores were just recently handing out to everybody a few weeks ago, you can get it now off TCG Player for about $6.
Yeah.
And there's no and that's foil. I mean, the promos are only foil, so you'd have to buy a War of the Spark one if you're not interested in foils. But the foil ones are less than $6.
They're less than $6, but this card is $6 when they had the pack printing, they had a pack foil, and then they had a promo when War of the Spark came out. Mm-hmm. So this is actually the 4th printing of this card, and this is $6.
Yeah.
And this, I think that this is the coolest looking one. This has that retro frame that looks like an old artifact border. So
I do like this border style for some cards, and this one looks really, really nice.
Yeah, and the shooting star logo looks really nice. The other thing is, you're talking about this card showing up in Pioneer. Even at our shop just a couple of weeks ago, GB was playing an eggs variant that was using this as one of the win cons.
Okay.
So this is seeing some modern play. If they print up something in we're going to have the Brothers War this year.
The tail end of this year, I think.
The tail end of this year.
Yep.
I mean, who knows what kind of artifacts we're going to get.
That's a good point.
So I think that this is brilliant. This is a good pick. I will say my first pick, and I sort of hinted to it earlier, is Subtlety. I think, one, it's the cheapest mythic pitch elemental.
Yep.
It's not going to get cheap. I don't think it's going to get cheaper than $6. And this is the regular pack copy. I think it's criminally underplayed. I think I saw it on stream the other night, and just seeing what a blowout it was, hearing you mention earlier that, Merfolk is playing some amount of them. When the other elementals are pushing $70,
yep.
If this one sees a little bit more play, it's going to go from $6 to $12 to $20
easily. And as you mentioned, this is just the regular artwork. This isn't even the showcase.
Oh, I should actually look at it on TCG Player. I'm looking at Mtg Stocks. $4.30, $5, $5.53. Like, you can get a play set of these for around $20. And I have absolutely no doubt that one of these, they won't show you the border list this way.
I was looking for the showcase. Yep.
Yeah. They're
because I'm just interested to see what those
subtlety borderless. And I'm just slowing down on my whole, wow, even those are cheap.
Yeah, $11. I know I bought a play set of them for my second deck, which was Rhinos.
Yeah.
And I bought them borderless, and I think I paid less than $10 a piece for them. I might be wrong. I'd have to look. But, I mean, you can buy them right now for less than 10.
Yeah.
Mint, light played.
And they are, those all of the elementals in the borderless treatment are really pretty.
Yep.
So I would say either way, you're not going wrong. I tend to think that the special treatments track get like a slight bump bonus.
Yep.
So if the regular one goes from $4 to $8, this one might go from $8 to $15. You know what I mean? Like, they grow at different rates, even though they're all going up. So I really like subtlety. I think it's underplayed and underpriced. I don't think that you're going to lose out picking up a few of these to expand your collection.
No, and these are being played not just in Fish, but they're being played in Living End. They're being played in, what was the deck that I've come across it a few different times. So it's starting to see more play, which in the beginning of MH2, this was thought to be the best, and then it quickly dropped to the worst.
Yeah.
And now it's slowly creeping back up.
I feel like Grief is going the same way. Like, Grief was, this is going to be busted with Ephemerate, and then, it's actually not that good, and the price tanked.
Yep.
And now it's like, actually, Grief is pretty good.
And that's why Solitude is a $60 to $70 card, because that one had the opposite effect of Grief.
Yeah.
So
you said that you had a pick for Pioneer, and you also had another one?
Yeah, I had a pick from Modern. This isn't going to be a cheap pick. It's more of, if you want to commit more to Modern and you're looking for cards that are going to hold their value, I think this one's going to be good. It's Chalice of the Void. It is a card that I do play off and on. You have to excuse my phone. But the price fluctuates a bit from time to time, and right now it's sitting about,
I think we saw about $60.
Yeah, about $60 off of TCG for lightly played near mint. And I feel like that's a good place to start acquiring some number of copies. Maybe not the full playset, but just some number. Trying to acquire these in the past, from a personal experience, pain. Big, especially when they hit the $70 to $80 price tag. And I think you felt this pain as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's painful. So $60, that's not bad. And you don't have to play the full 4. So buy one now, buy one in a few weeks.
Yeah. For something that it does wax and wane in popularity.
Yep.
And that doesn't impact the price. But when this is the best card in Modern sometimes, and that price rockets, you don't want to be trying to get them then.
Right. This is more of a long-term, I know at some point I'm going to play this card. I'm going to get one now, maybe get one in a few weeks, and just just watch it. And then if you have a playset and you haven't touched it in a year and a half and the price is $70-$80 when you bought in at $50-$60, hey.
Great, you can get out at a profit, but then you're just playing the game of waiting for the next reprint, and we just saw a reprint in the last 6 months in Time Spiral Remastered.
Yep. So
I think you're probably looking at 18 months or something before it gets another reprint.
Maybe.
And it just creeps up from now till then. I'm really terrified financially about Double Masters 2.
Yep.
I would say if you're sitting on a bunch of Renin 6, hoping that they go up in value, don't think they're going to go up in value. So if you're not playing them, watch out for that Double Masters 2.
Yep.
Awesome. My last pick also is from Modern Horizons 2, and that is Archon of Cruelty. Obviously, this has made a bunch of Reanimator decks viable in Modern.
Yep.
People have tried Esper. People have tried Dimir. People have tried a bunch of things. Crazy. It's like Sultai Brews. Just anything that can pull this out of the graveyard. I watched Saffron Olive, and you can't deny the Saffron Olive effect. But he was playing Cabal Coffers and Urborg, in Modern, and hard casting Archons. Like, here you go, deal with it. It's one of the best value reanimate targets in the format that you may actually be able to cast. And if you reanimate an Eldrazi, you don't get the cast trigger. Nope. If you reanimate an Archon, you get the trigger.
You get the ETB trigger.
Yeah.
Yep.
So even if they kill it, you drew a card, you did the thing. So the value on Archon of Cruelty is really good. I don't see a modern played mythic like this that's under $10. It seems unreasonable to me. I think that this will catch on probably more in Commander. I think it has that. I mean, it says target opponent, which means it's not as good as probably something else. But it's a 6/6 flyer for 8 that has an ETB trigger, that has an on-attack trigger, that's being played right now in already in Modern in multiple decks. This might take a year. This might take 2 years. This has to be a $25-$30 card.
I would agree, especially for Commander, where Commander drives a lot of prices for especially foils and a few other things. Commander has a lot of different play styles than, say, Modern or Pioneer or even Standard. And a graveyard-based strategy in an EDH is probably pretty common.
Yeah.
I'd have to guess.
Oh, yeah.
So this should fit into any deck that does graveyard-based shenanigans.
In EDH.
In EDH. And you're powering out mana so quickly, you could easily hardcast this.
So I'm just going to point something out right now that I noticed. And I feel like part of it, haven't been casting in about 8 weeks, it feels like. I haven't been looking at TCG Player that much. So I used MTG Stocks a lot to see price trends, how they're moving. I'm looking at TCG Player right now and looking at price trends. And this was one of the things that really intrigued me about Archon of Cruelty is that the price has been relatively consistent. Mm-hmm. Right now it's showing like a little upward trend in the last couple of days.
Yep.
But it hasn't dropped. If you look at the foil price at some point started to come down.
Yep. But
the regular Archon of Cruelty card has really not dropped that much in price.
Yeah, it looks pretty flatline.
It's all relative. There's some bumps and waves.
Yep.
But when you look at it, from 4 feet away, you're like, there's no big drop.
There's no big, right.
And I like that because I think that gives me even more confidence that it's not going down from here.
Yep.
It's really not. It's stable at this price for the play that it's seeing.
Yep.
Which means if it catches on either in EDH and gains more popularity there, if it shows up on a on a Game Nights episode or something like that. Or if one of the Modern Reanimator decks starts hitting the weekend challenges, 2 weeks in a row, I think it could move. So both of my picks lean more on the, hey, I'd like to get this card for $10 or less, and I'd like to sell it for $20 or more. Yep. So mine are sort of more speculation, but they may also be, hey, this card's not going to get any cheaper until it gets reprinted at this point. It's a mythic, and it's got a flat price for the last few months. That's 3 months.
And if you look off to the right too, you can actually view the sales history of latest sales and see how many have moved in the past few days. So that could also give you a indication of how quickly has this been selling, and how quickly is this going to sell out.
Yeah. So today, there's a whole screen of sales from today. 1 3 1 3 1 1 1 1 1 2 1 1 3 1 1 1. So, I mean, there might be 50 of those things that sold today.
Yep.
At that price.
Yep. Which is all between, $9.75 and I think the highest is $12.22. So I mean that's pretty good price to be picking them up at.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Hey, that was a lot of fun.
That was super fun.
Again, you're listening to the SnapCast Podcast. Now with Zach Moeller.
Sweet.
And if you found us on YouTube, great. We are also an audio podcast that you can get on any device that you would listen to your audio podcast. If you found us on an audio podcast, go check out our YouTube channel. You can see that maybe we don't look like what we sound like. Or maybe we do. But hopefully we will catch you next week. Peace out.
Peace.